Oh, good afternoon, everyone. Good to be seeing you.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, guys.
Hi.
Ready to go? I think we're ready to go.
Absolutely, yep.
Yes, we are ready to go.
Okay, I'll kick it off. On behalf of UCSF and UCSF Health Hub, welcome to our UCSF Digital Health Award semi-finalist. Maybe we'll call it a bake-off today because it's getting late in the afternoon and that just sounds good. These are 4 companies these are our winners. These companies have gone through there were well over 100 submissions for this category. We're going to hear from these companies. We're going to ask them a whole bunch of questions. They've got a few prepared answers, and we're going to get into it. I'll kick it off with the video.
Welcome to the 2nd Annual UCSF Digital Health Awards 2020, the Academy Awards of Digital Health, where we honor the best technologies that are defining and leading the digital health revolution.
We want to improve healthcare.
So we're really excited to be part of this wonderful evening.
Collaborators include the top healthcare incubators, accelerators, and venture capitalists across America, featuring the top 100 digital health innovators in the country selected from over 1,000 entries, 15 curated award categories, hundreds of judges selected from the healthcare community, healthcare industry thought leaders, thousands of online attendees, and dozens of virtual events, culminating in the September 23rd finals, honoring those who are reshaping the industry and making a difference in the COVID pandemic.
Join me, Twee Vu, as we honor the role digital healthcare plays in rewriting the future of health.
And the UCSF Digital Health Awards is narrating that future. Join us on September 23rd at 6 p.m. Pacific time for a 90-minute celebration as we honor these winners changing the future of healthcare.
Great. Well, welcome everyone. And my name is Mark Goldstein. I'm the chairman of UCSF Health Hub, and we are at a really, this was the most popular in terms of submissions category of them all, which is basically companies that are making our electronic health record system work a hell of a lot better. And these are, so this is a super popular category, and we're really excited to get going. Today's agenda, we're going to make an introduction we're going to introduce the companies. I have a co-moderator, Ursheet Parikh, and Ursheet is not only is he a director at UCSF Health Hub, he was one of our founders of Health Hub. He really helped us get it off the ground, and he's a partner at Mayfield Ventures. And Ursheet will talk a little bit more about himself. Roundtable discussion, we've got great companies and they're going to tell you about why they should be winning and why they're doing amazingly great things. We're then going to pepper them with a few questions towards the end. And then if you, with the extra time, we're more than welcome to take whatever questions we have from the audience. So today, while there are hundreds of people watching this live, a big part of this is how it's going to be recorded and shared with all the judges. We have over 250 judges, and they're going to use this in as part of their judging criteria to vote for the winners. A little bit more about me. My day job is I'm a venture capitalist, sort of like Ursheet. Helped start Health Hub, it's now 2 years ago. Health Hub is growing. We've got over 15,000 people who are members or followers of, actually members of Health Hub. We've got 20 or so venture capital firms that support us, and lots of sponsors, and usually we would be sitting here in Mission Bay having this conference. We've got a great campus at UCSF and great location there, but we're all online. So again, this is a little more, here we are, this is Health Hub. We think UCSF, and where we're sitting at the center of the healthcare, the digital healthcare revolution. And we've been fortunate to surround ourselves with other great companies, accelerators and incubators and sponsors that have all come together and help us put on this event. So this is our second event. It's our second UCSF Digital Health Award event. Our key sponsors are Wilson Sonsini, NTT, the huge Japanese telecommunications company, Silicon Valley Bank, Livongo, Novartis, and all these venture firms. You can see my firm is Builders, and there's Ursheet's firm, Mayfield. We're really excited about doing this and staying as close as we can to the community. I'm going to introduce Ursheet. He is really, he is actually one of my inspirations that I get to work with. We've done a few investments together. He really loves working with the companies. His background, he's got an MBA from Wharton. I'm a Penn guy, so I cheer, I cheer that. But with that, Ursheet, I'm going to turn it over to you. Tell us a little bit about you and Mayfield.
Sure. Thanks, Mark. Mark's always so gracious, but he's also one of the most fun guys to hang around. And he and Barry have really been forces of nature to get the entire UC health system to come behind them on this initiative. And every time I think he's kind of aiming at a certain level, I think, he's, and he and his leadership, how the UCSF Health Hub has become such a force for convening the innovation conversation has been awesome. So it's been a delight to have been part of that. I remember the very first conversation that Mark was having, and he's saying, "Hey, do you want to join on it?" It didn't take me much to say yes, but I don't think it could have been scripted better than that. So I don't get to often say how great a job Mark and Barry have done in their leadership in bringing this whole community together. So, well done. And then I'm glad to be here. Clearly, the best thing about investing in this category is whether we are investors in a particular company or not, we want all companies to be successful, because the success of companies translates into a better life for all of us. And, either us or our loved ones might end up needing those products, right? And so with that, it's great to then have such a collaborative community and a set of conversations. And I got to co-lead this practice for Mayfield, which is around health and engineering biology, in addition to doing enterprise investing. We've had a chance to work with a lot of great entrepreneurs, and what we are really hoping for is that companies emerge as next-gen standalone companies, because when the companies do sell into one of the existing large companies, you lose your mission. And if you are going to go and really fix healthcare, then you end up having to build or reinvent big parts of this ecosystem. And in doing so, it sort of requires really doing a build to last company. And that's one of the few things that is a core competency of us as a firm. We ourselves have been in business for over 50 years and have had a chance to work with just an exceptional set of companies and entrepreneurs over those 5 decades. And clearly, we are now the 4th generation. There's a certain culture that sort of works. And so, yeah, that's a little bit sort of background on us. And Sanjeev, Morris, Andre, Kyle, congratulations on getting to this stage here. And I look forward to hearing more about your vision and where you guys are headed. And it's a privilege to be in this conversation.
Excellent. And, Ursheet has 2 companies in the semifinals, and Incuventus and Mammoth. So fingers crossed for you. Let's take a step back. How did we get here? This is one of 15 categories that we're giving awards for. This category is for electronic health record advancement. We had over 1,000 companies submit for the awards. 750 we basically allowed into the first round because they actually had product that was in market. We've now gone through 3 rounds. We went through a first round, we went through a quarterfinal round, and now we've gone through a semifinal round. In doing so, we also engaged over 250 judges. These judges included professors, physicians, clinicians from UCSF and across the UC system, and actually across the nation. They included venture capitalists. They included analysts. They included folks running healthcare systems. They included people running clinics, and a bunch of people that raised their hand and says, "You know what? I know a lot about digital health, and I think I could help judge these companies." But we vetted these judges, and they all, we know who they are, and we feel really good about what they've done. So how did we get here with the criteria? Our first round, our primary role was to really weed out companies that we thought weren't quite market ready yet. We wanted to make sure the winners, especially the second year, were in market and were companies that we could help champion after the event and basically open doors across healthcare systems across the country. That's one of the big benefits of winning here. So in our second round, once we went through that first round of companies, we had 50 points. 10 points went to how valuable was this solution that the company was offering to customers? Was this a game changer? Was this something that was beyond life-saving, but it really was very different? Speaking of difference, what about innovation? How innovative is the product or the company? Is the company really, is it a fast follower, or is it really taking the lead in change? Level of validation. It was important that all these companies, if they required FDA approval, they had it, and they were in market, and they were something that healthcare systems could get interested in and adopt. Super important, because those are the companies we wanted to champion. Market traction, same thing. There's something to be said about having market traction and going through clinical trials. So the more market traction, the better. So you got 10, up to 10 points for that. And finally is differentiation, which is a lot what we're going to be teasing out today. How different are you guys? How different are now? And we're going to allow the companies to sort of tell how they're different. These are all great companies. Everyone here is a winner, but we're going to let the companies talk about how they're different. And Ursheet, I'm going to turn this over to you.
All right. So, for all of you not finalists, they're right here. And, what I thought would be good is for each of you to kind of share a little bit something about, your companies, right? What's really unique about your solutions? What does a user journey look like? How do you differentiate yourself since we are in the EMR space? What does Epic mean to you? And where will the next 5 years take you, right? So those would be sort of the set of questions. And so with that, Andrea, do you want to go first?
Sure, happy to. Do you want me to start?
Right, you know what? Top? I know we have the slides in a specific order. Let's Morris, since your slide's up, why don't you go ahead first?
All right.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Morris Panner, and I'm the CEO of Ambra Health. And Ambra Health does a couple of very important things. The first thing it does is it gets rid of CDs. So for the first time, you get to see CDs again in your doctor's office, and you really would rather not. So if you're trying to transport complex imaging, you'd like to get rid of all those CDs. But then one of the things that happened as we did that, as we digitized digital information, that was the irony of it, was we started to enable EMRs to do something they had never been able to do before, which was to enhance the view of the patient. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, one of the things that is fantastic for any clinician is to be able to see the image in context of the patient. So when you ask what is an Epic or a Cerner or any EMR for that matter, it really is often the cockpit for the physician. So what we transform is the ability for her to have imaging, an FDA-approved viewer, right in context, be able to share it with colleagues, and to be able to share it with patients. Then we took it a step further, which was as we were able to integrate all that information, we were able to start to enhance research and make that research organically part of the patient encounter. So one of the things we started doing was partnering with oncology groups who could take EMR data and imaging data and start to think in a whole different way about therapeutic advances and change the lives of patients. This was pretty personal for me. One of the reasons that this experience came about was when my son was younger, and I walked around, believe it or not, trying to get him into clinical trials carrying one of these. And I would go from location to location to location. And now he's doing much, much better. But now I have an echocardiogram, which you can sort of see here, on a device from this morning. And that's the kind of thing that transforms the way care providers, patients, and researchers can work together to make the EMR not a net negative, but a net positive. And you can't do anything with an EMR unless you have the data. And imaging data is ground truth, and it should be included in that patient profile.
Great.
Andrea, do you want to go next?
Yes, happy to. So, hey everyone, thanks for having me. My name's Andre. I'm the founding CEO and occasional janitor at HumanAPI. I know you guys, I don't know, that picture you found of me, I'm going to have to figure out where you dug it up, because I definitely had a few, I had fewer gray hairs. Yeah, that one.
Who's that guy?
That one there, right? And definitely didn't have my COVID beard going on. So look, at HumanAPI, we're on a mission to radically accelerate the pace of innovation in healthcare. And our view on one of the core issues facing the healthcare system writ large is this lack of what I call data liquidity. And it's a fancy way of saying healthcare data is really hard to get, make sense of, and use. And when I say healthcare data, I mean EHR is a major category that we play in. We also play in lab pharmacy, device, app data. Our approach to this problem, and I think it's a pretty unique approach, is we wanted to build the modern transaction layer for health data, but we wanted to build it in such a way that it would empower consumers and it would enable consumers to act as the agent that would create that data liquidity. So what that translated to is, if you're familiar with the PayPal or the Venmo experience, right? Where as a consumer, I can basically push a button and say, hey, all my medical records are historically at Kaiser and Stanford, and I've got labs at Quest, and I've got prescriptions at CVS and Walgreens, and I own a Fitbit. And I want to share all of this data with someone that's going to do something for me. It could be I'm enrolling in a clinical trial. It could be I'm checking into the doctor's office. It could be I'm applying for insurance. I'm switching employers. I'm enrolling in a diabetes prevention program. Whatever it is, what we fundamentally do at HumanAPI is we modernize that transaction and we enable the consumer to just seamlessly, with the click of a button, share their data from across our network, which now spans about 270 million consumers and about 30,000 unique data sources across the United States. So it's a very unique approach to trying to solve this problem that I think has plagued the industry for decades, which is how do you make data liquid and portable, and how do you make it seamlessly connect to wherever the consumer wants to share that data.
Great.
Thanks, Andrea. Kyle, do you want to go next?
Sure, happy to. So RxRevu, our mission is to improve the value of healthcare through better prescribing decisions. To really understand our differentiation and market position, you really got to understand how this happens today. Without us, a physician is making a purchasing decision on behalf of their patients without any pricing information, without any cost information. And it's just hard to imagine any other transaction in any other industry where that would happen. And part of the reason that is still in a lot of places the case today is just because it's been so hard to accomplish, not just from a technology perspective, but just understanding how to orient all these business relationships in a way that they would agree to move forward with such a thing. And that's what we've been able to do successfully. We've been able to take it from what were flat files moving from entity to entity to understand generic formulary and benefit information, to then sort of guess at the right prescription decision that they may be able to afford. And then a patient get to the pharmacy counter and realize that they can't afford it, and they have several formulary restrictions that won't even allow them to fill it yet. And move that to a real-time, patient-specific, pharmacy-specific transaction where we're interacting with over 150 million health plan members' data across the country. And we're doing that at a pretty significant scale with 130,000 or so monthly active users. So I think what we've been able to do is really look for that intersection of, where do payers and PBMs and providers and patients align on how to drive the right decision the first time. And we've been able to achieve that. And a lot of it's through guiding those decisions. In many cases, there are several drugs in a class. The physician doesn't have a strong opinion on what the right decision is necessarily. They're just trying to figure out the right happy path based on that insurance. And we've been able to create a system that can do that. The other really important complexity is that, pharmacists are probably the most valuable, underappreciated member of the healthcare value chain in a lot of ways. And pharmacists have manually sort of dealt with the completely different ways that EMRs and claim systems think about drugs. So the terminology used in the EMRs and the terminology used in claim systems is fundamentally different. And that's been okay because there's a human at the pharmacy counter that's been trained to make some of those translations. What we've also had to do is build an intelligence layer between the transactions to understand specifically what the EMR is trying to accomplish, how that relates to the claim system, and then get that back into the physician's hands while they're making that decision. And we've been able to do that, and we can do it in transactions that are, you know, sub-second in most cases. So in large part, we think we've kind of taken the hard yards approach of really trying to solve a big and important problem that has a meaningful impact on patients' clinical outcomes, but, you know, also their out-of-pocket cost and their bottom line, which is, you know, more important these days than ever.
Yeah. Clearly it's interesting. You know, it's great to see GoodRx's numbers as they filed to go public. So it's a great category to be in. Sanjeev, over to you.
Thanks, Ursheet. Thanks for having us. UCSF is actually a partner of ours, so really glad to be in some ways home. So what we do as a company, the award submission has been for one of our products around OR utilization, but this is exactly what we do for multiple assets: infusion centers, ambulatory clinics, inpatient beds. And the one thing we do really well is on the operational side. So at a high level, if you think about 6,000 hospitals in this country, each one of which has put in $400 to $500 million in the ground in heavy, expensive assets, that's $2 to $3 trillion of capital that's been spent. And yet, if I need to get my surgery done tomorrow through a doctor and I go visit him in clinic, there is so much back and forth between when they diagnose me with, hey, you need to get your knee replaced, to actually finding a slot in an OR to get my knee replaced. Meanwhile, if I wanted to book a vacation, I could go on Kayak and do it on my phone. If I wanted to get a reservation for dinner for my family for 4, I could go to OpenTable. And the reason is that the way scheduling is done in EHRs, which are phenomenal sources of ground truth, is based on a model that's fundamentally mathematically broken, because an appointment in an EHR is as if you're booking a tennis court. It assumes that the length of the appointment is deterministic. It'll start at 8 o'clock and end at 12 o'clock. Nothing in a hospital is deterministic. Everything is stochastic. How many surgeries a doctor will do in a given week, how long each will take, when they will start, what kinds of comorbidities does the patient have. So the reality of a hospital is that the economic backbone of the hospital is an OR. That's 40 to 50% of their revenues, probably more of their profits. And the way time is allocated is like it was allocated 50 years ago. Ursheet gets Monday block time, Sanjeev gets Tuesday block time, Mark gets Wednesday block time. Well, there's no guarantee that Sanjeev is going to use his Monday time as well as he can. So think about this. I have staffed ORs with anesthesiologists and nurses, and I've bought robots, and I have this fancy Southwest plane ready to fly. And a third of the time, the plane's not flying. And when it's flying, it's a third empty. So if you look at every other asset-intensive industry and how they match supply and demand and how they link different appointments in order to maximize revenue and patient access and lower cost, it's not surprising that if you take stochastic supply and stochastic demand, you can't use simplistic rules like block utilization and chair turns to measure efficiency. You need far more sophisticated tools that help you decide who should I give block time to, who should I take block time away from, how do I get people to release their time way before this notion of auto release, which is sort of a somewhat of a kludgy way of getting block owners to release their time. And so these are the complex issues around optimal OR utilization. And the problem is they're done in hospitals on the back of a napkin. They're done in EHRs as if we were booking tennis courts. So the difference between booking tennis courts and a surgery is if I booked a 3 to 4 and Ursheet, you booked the 4 to 5, at 4 o'clock you show up, you kick me out because it's your court at the Bay Club, right? Mm-hmm. Nothing in a health system can ever work like that. And yet we pretend like by painting 3 to 4 Ursheet, 4 to 5 Sanjeev, we're actually achieving something. So truth in scheduling. And when you do it right, you're able to unlock tremendous amounts of capacity. So what we've proven time and time again, 2,000 ORs in this country, 33 health systems, 4 of the biggest 10 health systems, and many others, that the median prime time capacity utilization, prime time means, let's say between 7 and 5 when I'm fully staffed, I have nursing and anesthesia available. It's not the case that 7 to 10 is empty because Dr. Parikh had the time but didn't have a case. Instead, Dr. Parikh actually released that time way early because our predictive analytics predicted he wouldn't use that time. And so Sanjeev picked it up, and Sanjeev wasn't, blessed by the block committee with a lot of block time. So I can look at it into an open table-like tool, get that, and find that time. These are the sorts of predictive and prescriptive tools. The EHR is fundamentally important to us because think about that as having maps data and us building ways, right? The core data of the underlying map is important, but what you do with it to help car drivers navigate to their destination and get there fast. The ROI that our customers are seeing is north of $500,000 per OR per year. Think about that for a second. Dignity Health has 300 ORs. CHS has 1,000 ORs. At a time when block time and OR time is at a premium, how can it be the case that on the very same day that Sanjeev doesn't use his time well, Ursheet doesn't even know that time wasn't going to be used well? That's just a crazy, crazy problem. And so it's a SaaS-based tool that sits on top of Epic, that sits on top of Cerner. It's EHR agnostic and has multiple modules that helps you right-size block the way it's scientifically and incontrovertible provable. It helps you release time and request time early. And it gives you metrics that make sense as opposed to averages. If my head is in the freezer and my feet are in the oven, on average, my body temperature is okay, even though I'm dead. And those are the kinds of metrics we have to get away from if we want to do demand-supply matching.
Well, that's a good summary, right? In terms of questions, I think we are at a very interesting time in the world. I think we can talk about a range of things, but it'd be great to understand, what has COVID meant for your businesses and for your customers.
Do you want us to go in the same order that we presented?
That'd be great.
Okay, perfect. It's been an interesting ride for COVID because one of the things COVID did very rapidly was virtualized everything. And so the ability to gain access to data virtually was increasingly important. So the approach of having imaging available in the cloud and accessible outside of a physical institution was really important. It was also important to be able to set up that kind of virtual network to enable, we did everything from enabling field hospitals in Brooklyn to in London, to developing imaging systems where our viewer could incorporate AI to be able to run inside of Italy to help triage patients, to the ability to enable a global research consortium in the UK to bring in imaging from everywhere in the world. And one of the things that happened in COVID, and some of the other panelists touched on it, was interoperability became something more obtainable. We still have a lot of steps to go, but for the first time, I saw sharing happen more rapidly. And one of the critical pieces of effectively sharing information is to be able to get the big data sets in that are going to enable you to draw conclusions. And so COVID for us was both an accelerant, it was a challenge, but I think long-term it's an accelerant for good because I think people are rethinking the way they're going to use data inside of a healthcare system, and they're going to rethink what a healthcare system is and how fundamentally you have to think about the infrastructure and access for that for your patients.
Great. Andrea, how did COVID sort of accelerate or slow down your business?
Yeah, and shine the light and see if we could go 30-second each would be great. Just
sure. You guys want to speed this up? So short answer. It was a pretty dramatic accelerant. I heard Morris joke earlier about replacing CDs. We replace a lot of fax machines. I mean, when you think about fundamentally what HumanAPI can do, when a consumer pushes a button and shares their data in real time, that replaces a traditional chart chase for a health plan. It replaces collecting medical data as part of insurance underwriting. Well, guess what happens when there's a global pandemic? You can't send people into the hospital to fax records all the time. And all of those resources were dramatically diverted away. So we saw a lot of our traditional competition, kind of the big boys that run the copy centers, get sidelined if not completely eliminated very, very quickly. So we were one of the lucky ones. We saw a very dramatic acceleration in our pipeline, in our commercial activity, and in our reduction in our average sales cycle as a result of COVID.
Right.
Cool. Kyle?
Yeah, one of the main things that changed for us is we saw an opportunity to think about the alternatives that we were providing differently. So in our tool today, we provide, in addition to the cost of the target medication for that decision, we provide alternative drug options and sometimes alternative pharmacy options. One of the things one of our strategic partner providers brought to us was, patient shows up in the clinic. This is a time where we want to be able to send them downstairs if that's an option, get their medications and send them home. So there's not an additional stop. There's not additional complexity. And, that not only does that lessen potentially the exposure they would have to the virus at the time, but it also dramatically improves adherence, right? Because adherence is driven by convenience and cost, and we can solve both of those in one tool. So, we were already doing some things around that, but it gave it a different purpose and it gave it a different focus, and really led to us seeing different kinds of opportunities as a result of it. And that felt just squarely in the mission we were trying to target. It's just, we were able to solve something for the providers, improve adherence for the payers, find a better option, both cost and convenience wise for the patient. It just felt like one of those great places where the interest all aligned. So we were pleased to be able to deliver in that way.
Great. Sanjeev, how has it been selling into health systems when they've really had to go all hands on deck?
So actually, it's interesting. We're in a space where we're addressing sort of the core problem of surgical backlog, right? For 2 months, they lost so many elective surgeries, and it's, like I said, the economic backbone. So in fact, our sales cycle got cut dramatically. Our time to value got cut dramatically. The kind of value we could show, the evidence of ROI by being able to do more with less and pack their ORs went up dramatically. So there are massive systems like Novant Health, 100 ORs, 23 locations that went live in a month. We moved to virtual implementation. So our LTV over CAC has, in some unfortunate ways, gone through the roof because there is no cost to selling and marketing while the need is very, very high. And I just mean that from a business owner's perspective. The ROI for what it's as if there's a big fire in town and we have a water hose that people want. And so I guess, better lucky than good in some ways, but our business is doing very well as a result of that. And the other reason it's doing very well is that COVID's shone a really bright light that in a demand supply shock situation, you have to be agile and resilient, and you cannot do that by hand. You cannot do that by the ways you schedule by hand. And I already talked about why this is a $1 trillion problem, because $3 trillion have been put into the ground. You get efficiency up and asset turns up by 10%. That's a lot.
Yeah, the one of the best things that I personally believe the lasting impact of COVID is going to be is that it fundamentally changes a lot of the ossified processes and systems. At a personal level, I wanted to see a doctor on the weekend. I was able to connect, go see a doctor in real time, needed a bunch of imaging, and then I needed to see a couple of specialists after that. And the specialists have my CT scans, and all of it is delivered without me having to do anything. And oh, by the way, I can open my Apple Health Kit and I can see all of this integrated record across 3 different health systems. So the doctors can see the health records with the CT scans. I can see that, and the fact that this is happening in real time, it's happening with telemed. It's the prescriptions are showing up at home directly without me even having to go into the clinic. It's truly sort of become the e-commerce moment out in healthcare. What I think that does is it has really created a lot of opportunities for companies, but it has also sort of significantly shrunk the runway that companies had before incumbent large companies would step up to do things. And so, right, everyone's sort of, not being a fan of Epic, but then you see what's happening with their Care Anywhere stuff, and then their mobile apps and their Apple Health Kit integration and things like that. And so, as a final question, I'd love to sort of leave, with each of you sort of sharing in a minute, where you see the future of healthcare and the consumer and the provider experience being 5 years from now. And how do you see to be, and how do you expect to be powering that? And is there a pivot along the way for you? So Morris, you want to go first?
Sure. fundamentally, I think 5 years from now, we're going to be having an active discussion about who really is your doctor. And the consumer is going to be at the center of the experience. And what you described about having access to data is going to be key to that. And we sit within, if you think of healthcare as a pyramid, at the basic level, there's a lot of stuff that if you do well, everything kind of moves along. Once you move into a chronic condition or any kind of significant illness, all of a sudden imaging becomes table stakes. It's how people guide what happens. And that is going to be increasingly in people's hands. And I think it's going to happen inside of this ecosystem that you describe in large hospital systems. We're in 4 of the 5 big hospital systems, 4 or 5 of the children's hospital systems. We have 1 million views of complex diagnostic imaging logins a month. And all of that has to take place within an ecosystem that's going to evolve because there's a lot of fixed investment inside of the EHR platforms. But 5 years from now, with consumers driving how they make choices from therapy providers, from traditional healthcare providers, and from innovative healthcare providers, they're going to need access to that data, and it's going to have to be in a format that is extremely shareable. And that's why we believe that ultimately we're setting the table for the new data platform of the future.
Andrea?
So the future of healthcare in 60 seconds was the question.
And your role.
I think
30 seconds.
And go, yeah, all right, my time is ticking down. Look, I think one of the hardest things about, I think being an entrepreneur and being a venture capitalist is trying to predict and time markets. It's probably the one thing you look out far enough in the future and there are some things that are obvious. I think one of the things that is obvious is that every industry eventually consumerizes. It's just a matter of you have timing, you have regulations. At some point, that famous Charlie Munger quote, show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcome. At some point when you align with those incentives, you're gonna see that behavior shift. And I think you have events like COVID that tend to accelerate it. So our view on it, my view on it is real-time health data, which is what we provide, that's required to disrupt the status quo. When you have an event like COVID, you have a tailwind that accelerates and creates the incentives that maybe weren't present when we were all having this conversation at HIMSS 5 years ago. Like, what's going to be different now? And I think the answer is you've eliminated what was previously there, and now you're in this world where you're forced to put the consumer at the center because there is no alternative, or the cost of that alternative is so high that you have to go and sort of march forward on this path. So that's certainly what we're seeing across, whether it's our digital health startups or, the 2 guys in a garage building the next big thing, using HumanAPI or some of the biggest Fortune 500 customers we have, relative to 2 years ago where they had alternatives. Now they're saying, look, this industry is consumerizing and we don't really have a choice. We have to follow this path.
So more consumerization. Kyle, what about you?
Yeah, so similar orientation, different problem, is that right now, if you think about what happens when health plans or PBMs or providers all have different opinions on the right decision, is the patient ultimately is the one that has to reconcile that confusion. And we've sort of not ever created a consumer-centric experience around how to do better decision support and better utilization management. And I think what we see is an opportunity to start doing that in real time at the points of decision that matter the most. So that's the point of care. That's also empowering the consumers to understand what are your options, how do those relate to your health plan, and how do we make sure we get you to the right decision the first time, because there's so much waste tied up in just not having the right data when the right decision needs to be made. And we're what we've been able to do with the prescription price transparency real-time benefit effort is really solve that prescribing problem where we can avoid prior auths and we can avoid decisions that would have otherwise created friction. And there's a lot more opportunity beyond that, whether it's prior auth related and other sort of combination of payer, provider, and patient all making real-time decisions because they're all empowered to do so with piece technology. And that's what I see the future is for us, is that becomes realistic, and it's already happening in small ways, and it's only going to happen in bigger ways.
And so it's, I guess, empowering consumers. Sanjeev, you get the last word because I think we need to wrap up.
Mute, Tom.
Sorry. So in 5 years, I think hospitals will be a lot more efficient. The throughput will be much higher, at least the ones that survive. Every aspect of a hospital will be seeing more patients during business hours at lower costs. So access will be higher, cost will be lower. Because instead of admiring the problem and building reporting and dashboards, there will truly be smart command centers with intel inside. So instead of watching a TV saying, yes, I knew that I've got a large waiting room where patients are waiting, patients won't wait as much because optimization of scheduling, optimization of and digitization of all the processes leading to scheduling, and when the patient shows up, much like Waze, in a lot of ways, reduce traffic jams. I'll keep it to 30.
That's awesome.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I think congratulations again on kind of getting here. I think, a lot of great things are sort of happening around the ecosystem. I think in post-COVID, I think a month is like a year in terms of how fast this ecosystem's moved. And I think, as I said, it'll create great opportunities and challenges for sort of companies. Mark, any closing comments? Congratulations again to all of you.
Well, yeah, look, Ursheet, great job. And 4 really good panelists. I really, this is a great way to start the afternoon. In 8 days, or not 8 days, we're having our grand finale on the 23rd. So tell your friends, tell your families, tweet it out, get everyone watching what'll be a 90-minute show. We've got a lot. It's going to be a show where you're really going to be able to sit back, have a tequila on the side, and basically celebrate actually some good things. And this is to celebrate, it's you guys, celebrate basically companies that are really making a difference. And so I encourage you to get everyone to join. We're targeting 10,000 people for the event. So look, thank you all. We basically are 3 minutes over our limit. We're pretty good. So great afternoon. Good luck to you guys. Congratulations. And Ursheet, thanks as always.
Oh, thanks, Mark. Thanks, everyone, guys. I actually thought it was until 4:45, so didn't realize it was only 4:40.
Well, it's 4:44. But no, it's just because I have to do another one of these at 5. So, so I've got to get
pretty cool.
But this has been great. Thanks, guys. You guys were really good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right.
Take care.